I want to begin with some remarks about the situation. Israel is facing now pressure on two areas. One is the Palestinian issue, which at the end of the day is something that should be resolved because this is a need for Israel and in a way a need for the Palestinians. But we will not have any influence on the whole Middle East problems, and will not ease the situation either in Libya or Egypt, neither in Syria or Iraq. Will not degrade the abilities of ISIS or Hezbollah. This is against the notion of too many, which became kind of a belief or religion, that this is the source of the problems in the Middle East. It's a huge mistake. It's a standalone problem between us and the Palestinians, and when we will have an agreement, people will understand that it is not connected to any of the problems that the Middle East is facing today. But it should be solved because of the relations between us and the Palestinians and other reasons. The other area in which we feel under pressure is the Iranian issue. From what we understand, the Americans are going to sign a bad agreement with the Iranians, or the chances of having a bad agreement with the Iranians are very high. The Iranians understand that the eagerness for having an agreement in the American side is stronger than their need to have an agreement, and they use it near the negotiation table. They feel that because of ISIS, the Americans are very busy and on other places, and are not ready to go to another front with the Iranians. There are some Americans which, more than that, think that the natural ally of United States of America in this war against ISIS is Iran more than others. And the Iranians understand it and again use it as a card near the negotiation table. We really believe that the Secretary of State was right when he declared a year or two ago that bad agreement is worse than no agreement. And if it will be a bad agreement, and I don't know, but if it will be a bad agreement, Israel will have to make decisions. If those decisions will be implemented after having an agreement between Iran and the P5+1, it will put Israel in a very delicate situation. But because the threat of nuclear Iran is so crucial for Israel to prevent, that will not stop Israel. And the decision will not be taken based on the assumption or because of the assumption that the P5+1, including America, will not like what Israel might do, but relating to the threat, our capabilities to postpone it, and the price of the postponement. That will be the factors in the decision. But no question, that will be a very delicate decision, very not easy one to make, but if we will face a bad agreement, we will not have any other choice but to make the decisions. These are two main areas that Israel might face pressure from the outside. There are some areas that Israel has to deal with, but in those areas like facing radical Islam in Sinai or in the Golan Heights, we feel that we are on the same track with the Americans and others who understand that there is a need to contain the radical Islam. How to do it, when to do it. If we can argue what the notion that radical Islam should be contained is shared by many around the world, including Israel. So in this area, it's easier to make decisions, and the international frame is easier to help us to make those decisions. So this is the beginning, and now I open to questions, whatever you want. I will not tell you any secrets, but I try to make you understand. Yes, I will begin with the corner, yes.
How do you feel about the fact that what the U.S. considers a bad deal and what Israel considers a bad deal are clearly quite different?
I think it's natural. As a little state, unlike America, living in the Middle East, unlike America, with the being a direct target of Iran, unlike America, it's natural that we see the situation different than Washington. And it was always like that. With all the efforts to be on the same page, and we succeeded in some cases to be on the same page with the Americans. It does not surprise that the same issue looked different from Washington than from Jerusalem. The problem is not that it looks different. The problem that is, it will be a bad agreement based on our judgment. It will be an agreement which was signed by America, and we will have to act in a situation in which the Americans have an agreement with Iran, which we cannot fulfill. This is the issue, not the difference about about Iran. That most of the time was judged differently in Washington than in Jerusalem.
Can I just add, do you think that the administration fears Israel attacking Iran more than it does Iran getting a bomb, or vice versa?
I don't know. I don't think this is the issue. I think that the Americans, because of their interest, are eager to have an agreement with the Iranians, and they are ready to take risks that Israel cannot take.
So what happens in that, sorry, just to follow up, what happens in that case where there's divergence?
Israel will have to make decisions. Will we agree to go with the Americans and to take the risk of having nuclear Iran behind the corner, or not to take the risk and to act? What will be the decision? I don't know. Yes.
I'm interested in following up on that. I can't think of anything that would be a more seismic impact on traditionally very strong U.S.-Israeli relations than an Israeli strike on Iranian facilities in the wake of a P5+1 agreement. Can you tell us a bit about how you would think about U.S.-Israeli relations post-strike? Would there be, I mean, that would just completely destroy the traditional alliance between the countries?
No. I think that it will not destroy the whole alliance. It will be a huge problem, but not the first time.
Is there anything in history that would be a precedent for something that would be this big of a problem for U.S.-Israeli relations?
I don't know if there is something which is as bad as that from the American point of view, but I remember the military American attaché going out of the head of the intelligence office after we attacked the Iraq and Iraq. He was white like this map, and the Americans stopped the supply of aeroplanes to Israel for a while. And a few years later came to apologize because it was understood that only the Israeli operation stopped Iraq from having nuclear. When it is coming to crucial issues, with all due respect to the good relations with Washington, this is not the only, not the most important element in the decision-making process. If the Prime Minister of Israel and the government feels that it is endanger the Israeli ability to defend itself in the future, So with all due respect to the Americans, we will have to make decisions. If the feeling will be that it's a threat, it's a problem, but under the framework of the agreement, Israel is in a position to defend itself in the future if and the Americans will help and so on and so forth. I don't know what will be the decision. But if the feeling in Jerusalem will be that this is either we do it or we lose the ability to stop the Iranians, with all due respect to the American agreement they cannot bind, we are not part of the process, so it cannot stop us.
Over here.
I just came from a talk from Jacob Sullivan, could be charitably described as one of your American counterparts, and he referred to a Jeffrey Goldberg article today in The Atlantic, where both Israeli and American officials had not such nice things to say about each other. And he also spoke a lot about the human, the imperfection of humans making decisions, personal decisions based on emotion in the American and Israeli administrations. And I wanted to ask, it seems like after the most recent operation, when America cut off Israeli supply for a short time, it seemed to be implied in the press that it was because they didn't like the way that we were treating John Kerry. And when the defense minister arrived in Washington, he couldn't get the meetings that he wanted. And it seems from a very outside perspective that we're in this era of relations where it seems to be based more on interpersonal relationships between the people than it does on the country's interests. And I'd be really interested in getting your perspective as an insider.
First, we are human beings. God can make decisions without any emotions. We can't. So it's natural that when human beings involved in decision making, there are emotions. I don't think that government change policies because of personal emotions. But based on, as Prime Minister Palmerston said once, Great Britain does not have permanent friends and allies, but permanent interests. At the end of the day, decisions based on interest, values, ideologies, and so on and so forth. It's not just interest, it's more than that. If you bring interest, values, and ideology, this is the area within you make decisions.
And do you think the Americans see it that way too?
I think it's true about every country. Within the policy that you shape based on interest, ideology, and values, there are nuances that can be taken based on personal relations. And better personal relations allow more flexibility, and bad personal relations allow less flexibility. But it does not change the policy. The problem with such bad relations is the mistrust. It's not the nuances of the policy. It's the fact that people do not trust each other. And even if someone is doing an action that on its face value it's innocent, you don't believe it. This is the problem. And this is something which is behind the limitation of anyone in the system. It's either you have it or you don't have it. And this is the problem now between the White House and Jerusalem, is the mistrust. This is something that I can only be sorry about. Yes?
You mentioned that the Israeli-Palestinian relationship is a distinct issue aside from all the other conflict in the Middle East, which is, I think, a very astute observation. What do you think is the core issue in those other conflicts, and how does Israel view security with respect to those?
I think that the Middle East now is in the transition period. It's a struggle within the Arab society between modernity and radical Islam. What will prevail, I don't know. Islam as a religion didn't transfer itself like Christianity and Judaism, and the state, the religion, and the private life are all together under the same kind of arrangement. Something which for sure does not exist in most of the Christian societies and in most of the Jewish communities. And you can hear voices in Israel saying that there should be more, but no one see the rabbis giving orders to the prime minister or advising the prime minister or even parties. It's very rare in Israel. You can find it in the ultra-Orthodox side, which is, I don't know, at the end of the day, 10% of the Israeli population. If I'm mistaken, 20% of the Israeli population. In Islam, it's totally different. Under the Sharia, everything is supposed to be taken based on the Prophet behavior in the past and how it is understood today. From relations between men and women to decision of the government through economy, law, and whatever. And this for sure is preventing modernity from taking part in those societies. And this struggle in the Middle East is the main issue at the end. And it's a very genuine one. It's not imposed from the outside. And I think it was Kissinger who wrote that the Middle East is as Europe before the Westphalia Agreement, 1648. Which the essence of that agreement was to exclude religion as a factor in the decision-making of peace and war, and sovereignty of states. And what you see in the Middle East is this disintegration of state and evaporating of borders, contrary to what was the essence of Westphalia Agreement. And the Middle East has to go through a process which will lead to a kind of Westphalia Agreement like understanding of what does it mean sovereignty, the religion in the area, relations between states, and so on and so forth. And it will take time. I don't know what will be the results. Will it be more optimistic? I mean, like Tunisia, for example, which makes some signs of democracy, or more pessimistic, like Syria, which disintegrated, and I don't see any way for any agreement between the elements within Syria. It either the Alawite continue to control the Syrian part of Syria state, and that will be the situation, continuous war, or if the Sunnis win the battle, they will eliminate the Alawite as a sect in on earth. That will be the end. And the Alawite understand it, and this is why they are fighting very cruel war against the Sunnis, because the Druze, the Christians, and the Alawites understand that if the other side wins, it's, for them, the end of history. So this is a struggle within the Arab societies, which will take time to resolve. It's a very cruel one. I mean, it's like Europe 300 years ago.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how Israel sees its security approach in relation to, or saw it in relation to the beginning of the Arab Spring, and if its thinking about security has changed in the interim as the Arab Spring has turned it into what it is today.
The answer is yes. Many things changed, but there are some elements which are very fundamental to understand. This is the asymmetry that Israel is in and cannot be changed. Israel forever will be a very little country, as big as Kuwait without the West Bank, and a little bit more than that. New Jersey, like New Jersey. This is Israel.
Hopefully not too much like New Jersey.
No, I think I speak
In
only
size,
about
yeah.
your size. Nothing else than that. To anyone. For sure not for people from New Jersey. Tomorrow, I have to be very careful. Tomorrow I fly from New Jersey, not from Kennedy.
Don't worry, we've got a senator in New Jersey. We'll be all right.
I don't want to be,
We've got a manager.
someone who stop me and ask questions about New Jersey. No. We will be forever demographically very little. Even of all Jews from the world come to Israel, it will be 15 million, surrounded by 400 million Arabs and 1 point something billion Muslims. We are the only Jewish state in the United Nations. In the United Nations, out of 193 members, there are 22 Arab countries and 57 Muslim countries. So I mean, it's a big group of countries which vote automatically with the one side. And the last but not least asymmetry is that even if Israel won 100 wars, we have to prepare ourselves for the 101. If we lose once, we will not have a second chance. And these asymmetries are not going to be changed because of the different kind of states or disintegration of states or changes in the Middle East and so on and so forth. We have to live with it and to cope with it and to find solution for it. The character of the threat changed. I mean, if you go to history and you see that the first stage was a classical military forces, big armies, many tanks, airplanes, artillery, whatever. It doesn't exist, only in Egypt. The Syrians use it against their own people. Iraq lost its military capability during the war against the Americans and afterwards. The Jordanian military army is very sophisticated, very professional, but very little. And it's only the Egyptians who has a huge military apparatus, but they are very much focused on domestic issues today. So at least for the next few years, we are not facing the classical military threat as we had in the past. What we face is different kind of threats. It is either hybrid organizations like Hamas and more than that Hezbollah, which is NGO. It's not a state. They don't have armored divisions, but they have 150,000 rockets and missiles. They have anti-air missiles. They have anti-ship missiles. They have military forces which are equivalent to 2 divisions in numbers, not in weapon systems. It's a terror organization. They act within populated civilian areas towards civilian targets, but at the same time with capabilities that very few states have, like the number of missiles and the range of the missiles and the accuracy of the missiles and very sophisticated anti-air missiles and anti-ship missiles. So it's a hybrid organization. But at the same time, we understand that we are not facing the old threat of classical military forces, but we face a totally different threat of missiles and sophisticated rockets and so on. This is why if you look at the investment of the State of Israel today, it's a modern air force, Iran in mind, and much better intelligence. We invest in intelligence a lot of money because we understand that one of the keys for such wars is good targeting systems, and the basis is intelligence. And more infantry than armor, although I don't see any substitute to good armor division in some areas in Lebanon. And anti-air missile systems that we have today, 2 layers, and we are going to build another 2. We have the Iron Dome, we have the Arrow 2, we are going to have David Sling in between, and to build the Arrow 3 for a longer range interception. And within 5 to 7 years, to bring in the laser interceptors, which will be more sophisticated for the and good enough for the very short-range missiles and rockets. At the end of the day, Israel will have to invest only in this area of anti-missiles and rockets around, I think, $12 billion, if not more. But I think at the end of the day, we will find a solution to this threat, which is a new one, and for most of the Arab countries and those NGOs, it's a substitute to classical military force. And I believe that with some help from the United States of America, mainly to manufacture, we will have these abilities. By the way, from all this spectrum of projects, the Iron Dome is pure Israeli product. We got the money from America to purchase and to manufacture more, but the whole system is a pure Israeli one. David Sling Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 is a joint venture between America and Israel. It's we join efforts, and the knowledge and the know-how is shared by both sides. The laser probably will be an Israeli project again. So these are the different threats that we are facing, and of course we are very much focusing on fighting terror within the area which is under Israeli control, West Bank and inside Israel. And we apparently succeeded to reduce the numbers to a level in which we can live with. In 2002, when we reconquered the West Bank, we had in 1 month 122 casualties inside Israel. It means 1,500 per year. We succeeded to reduce the numbers the first year after the operation to retake the West Bank in 50%, the second year 40%, the third year another 50%, and another 50%, and since then it is between 0. 1 year it was 0, I think it was 2010, I'm not sure, between 0 per year to less than 30 per year. These are the numbers in the West Bank. So this is also something that we are dealing every day.
Take you back to Iran. You mentioned that if Israel perceives that America, with P5+1, signed a bad deal, that Israel would take matters into its own hands. I presume you mean a kinetic military attack. Could you walk us through what's the best case scenario when that happens? What's the worst case scenario? And if you could assign some probabilistic values of the two scenarios.
The best scenario is that they will succeed to postpone it for some years. And during these years,
Something less than 5, or
I don't know. And during these years, will be a change in Iran that will separate the Iranian regime from being controlled by the mullahs. And it will be a regular state.
a full revolution.
with interest and benefits and so on and so forth, but which will not be led by someone who has a dream to annihilate the state of Israel.
Would you be comfortable with an Iran, a nuclear-armed Iran that was not led by the
I
mullahs?
don't know why to answer, fix Iran and we will discuss it later.
How do you account for the fact then that most of the Iranian population, not accounting for the regime, supports the idea of a nuclear bomb and certainly would probably react to an Israeli attack by increasing support for the regime?
I don't believe that this is true. From what we know, the regime understands that by losing the nuclear project, they will lose. They are not going to gain more support of the population. And even if they will, with all due respect, this is not the most important issue for us. If this regime will have more support in Iran, but not having nuclear capability, it's better than less support of the population with nuclear capability. So, even if you are right, I don't believe that you are right, by the way. But even if you are right, it doesn't matter. This is the best scenario. The worst scenario is that we will do the operation and we will not succeed. And then they
Success
will
being defined by pushing their program back a number of years.
and they will have the capability, and we will be in a weaker position to recruit the world to act against them after an operation. So this is the worst scenario.
How likely do you think?
I don't know. I think that from what we have today and all the information that we have, our chances to get to the target, to hit the targets and to destroy them are very high. But percentage, I don't know. I don't know that anyone. I don't know that anyone can. I don't believe that anyone can. Yes, we can identify, we can hit, and it would be a huge damage. How huge? I don't know how to measure it. But I think there is something else which is not less important. Take the worst scenario. The Iranians have, it's a fact, the Iranians have nuclear capability. What will be a better situation for Israel? Because from the minute that they have it, you are coming to the area of deterrence. Now, change all the rules, and now the only game is deterrence. Israel be in a better position to deter the Iranians after an operation which was not a full success, or without an operation. As in Hebrew we say, paper tiger, I think, I don't know, folks in English. What will be, take the assumption that worst come to worst. The Iranians, this is a fact, 2020, the Iranians have nuclear capability. Deterrence-wise, Israel will be in a better position after an operation or without an operation. I think that Israel will be in a better position after an operation, when it will be clear on the other side that we are determined to use our capabilities and ready to pay the price.
Even if it shows that you're unsuccessful in trying
Even,
to
sorry?
even if it shows that you're unsuccessful in your
It
ability
doesn't
to
matter
actually...
because here we are speaking, when it comes to deterrence, it's totally different kind of tools and operations. The question is, are you determined
Keep the willingness to do so.
and you have the willingness to do something?
Sorry, can I push back on that for a second? So you're saying that a conventional military strike before Iran has nuclear capabilities says anything about what Israel would do after Iran has nuclear capabilities, presumably talking about then a nuclear strike? I don't think the two are related at all.
It says nothing what Israel will do, but it will tell something to decision makers in Iran when it will come to deterrence.
I think it's more likely to say what Sam said, which is that the operation was bungled.
Operation what?
The operation was bungled. It wasn't a success. And so then, sort of, how does that play into nuclear deterrence at all? I'm not quite getting that.
I know, what I said that now it's 2025, okay? We did something which was not a success, postponed it only for 2 years. The damage was not as big as we thought that it will be. This is one situation. The other one, we didn't make anything. We just spoke, and the Iranians have nuclear capabilities. We didn't make anything. Deterrence-wise,
Yeah, there's no difference.
what Israel will be in a better position? After an operation or without an
I
operation?
think there's literally no difference. And I'm just not understanding how a conventional.
I
strike
think that
is
Israel, it says something about the decision makers in Israel. They are ready to make a decision and to take the responsibility and the price.
Don't the Iranians know that post-Osirak, though? Is that not enough of a...
No, Osirak was many years ago. In Iraq, it's a totally different story. It's Iran is 1,500 kilometers, and Osirak is only 500. So from this point of view, deterrence, just deterrence, because I'm going straight to the worst possible case. Iran has nuclear capability. Psychologically, logically, where Israel will be in a better position, deterrence-wise, after an operation which was not as successful as we thought it will be, or without an operation? I believe that with operation. Yes.
Is Saudi, where are they getting their nuclear capabilities from?
Sorry?
Are they getting any help from like Russia?
No.
Or
No.
It's coming from
No,
themselves?
no, from themselves.
So you
Nothing from North Korea?
No, they got some help at the beginning from indirect from Pakistan, from AQCAN. In the area of missiles, they got a lot of help from North Korea, some from Russia, but now they are doing it by themselves. They don't need any help from outside. I mean, maybe it will be a problem.
They came from MIT.
There's a question over here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really curious to know what is your views on the United States reaction, I don't want to call it strategy, reaction to ISIS in Syria?
I think that professionally, and I told the Americans when I was in the Hill last month, that without ground forces there is no way to win this battle against ISIS. Either it will be American forces or local forces. This is less important. What's very important is to have ground forces on the ground working together with the Air Force. Otherwise it will be hit there and target there, but there is no way to win such an operation against ISIS without ground forces on the spot.
And do you see that addressing ISIS, like from our views, ISIS is a symptoms for the conflict in Syria? If maybe they destroy ISIS, but ISIS will be replaced by 4 different letters. It's not the issue.
I think it's more complicated. ISIS is not just a reaction to the conflict in Syria. It is also a result of vacuum in Iraq. And the combination of both the struggle within Syria and the disintegration of Iraq as a state brought ISIS to the situation in which it is today. And yes, you are right. If the issues will not be solved, someone other than ISIS will come in. Because this is the nature of vacuum. Someone is filling it in the end. So, yes, you are right, but if not assuming something theoretical, that the Americans are winning the war against ISIS, it will be a strong signal to the area. Yes, we the Americans are back here, and if there is an issue, we will solve it. And be careful when you do something that might hurt the American interest, and I think it's very important. The question that I have is, if that will not work, what will be the reaction on the area? It will be clear that even big America didn't succeed to stop and to contain the ISIS people. That would be a devastating situation.
Can I piggyback on that? You know, there's a big debate in this country right now about what America's role in the Middle East should be after all this time, particularly with all of these internecine conflicts, Sunni versus Shia, Sunni versus Sunni. From your perspective, as from coming out of the Israeli security establishment, what's your view on a positive role for the American Middle East, something that as a net benefit for American strategic interests, or maybe for Israel's too?
First, I really don't think that we should give American advisors what to do and what are the American interests. We don't like that others preaching us, and I think it's a huge mistake to preach to the Americans. I want to say something in principle, not relating to the Americans. I don't believe that even America can change the direction of the trend, historical trend in the Middle East. With all due respect to the Americans, it's big even on America. It's like throwing stones to the Mississippi. You cannot change the direction of the stream. It will be there. It's not that someone made mistake, and because of that, the Middle East looks like it is today. No, it's an historic event which happened once in 100 years, and it happened. We are in the middle of it. We are in the mix of it, and we cannot change it by this action or another. What should be done in such occasions when there is an historic event, which is very deep and very wide, is to look at the situation and say, okay, I cannot change it. What is the most dangerous phenomena which might come out of this trend? And at least this most dangerous phenomena should be contained or stopped or postponed or whatever. Don't spread your energy all around the area. It's too wide, it's too deep. No way to deal with all the problems at the same time.
Philosophically, what is the most dangerous phenomenon?
From my point of view, nuclear Iran.
How do you view...
If I have to choose between having stronger ISIS or having nuclear Iran, I prefer stronger ISIS.
How do you view the balance of power struggle between the Gulf states and the Iranians as it's manifested in Iraq, in Egypt, and in Syria?
Look, the Gulf countries cannot be... they are very rich but very weak, and there is no way to change it. You look at, I don't know, Qatar. It's 500,000 or 250,000 people with 2 million workers coming from all around the world, mainly from Pakistan, India, and so on.
Got a lot of money though.
A lot of money, yes, a lot of money. It can buy you influence. You know, there was a soccer game in Spain a week ago between Barcelona and Real Madrid, two best teams in Europe. One owned by the Emirates and the other by Qatar. If you want to understand the European situation, symbolized by this game. One play with Fly Emirate, and the other one, I don't know what's written about Qatar what? Airways. I don't know, maybe. This is so you can buy assets, you can buy influence, you can buy even the World Cup game, but you cannot buy security.
So if the worst case scenario is a nuclear Iran, and you'd rather have a strong ISIS than a nuclear Iran, more immediately, would Israel rather see Assad fall and have this unknown experiment happen on your border, or would you rather see a strong man who suppresses people but is a known enemy?
This is my personal view, I don't know the government view. I prefer bad guys without Iran than bad guys with Iran. It's very easy. They are both bad, but I prefer the bad guys without Iran.
But America doesn't see it quite like so clearly. Would you say that? the administration doesn't seem to think that Iran is quite the same threat. It's quite that easy to say that a nuclear Iran is as big a threat as a stronger ISIS or a greater threat.
So what is the question? Do the Americans agree with us?
Yes.
Probably not.
That's the answer for any question.
Well, getting back to ISIS, you mentioned earlier that, there's this discussion about whether or not to provide ground forces and whether or not that should be coming from the US or other sources or local sources. And a lot of the midterm elections here have centered around providing support to moderate factions within ISIS or within Syria and arming those factions and providing them with support. Is that a feasible policy? Like, who are the moderate factions within Syria, and how can we ensure that
Very.
yeah. Well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Not the armed moderate faction, the political faction.
Well, we could give
No, thank you.
Bring the moderate to Yale. There is no one opposition in Syria, it's oppositions with big S. We counted once 2 years ago in Idlib. There is an area called Idlib in the northwest of Syria. 43 organizations of opposition. Who is against whom, and so on. It's very problematic. It was easier at the beginning when the numbers were less than it is today. Today it's very, very complicated. But still, I think that some of them can be identified. And I'm not familiar with all the details. That it's a good question. How to identify those who might be helpful to the United States of American interest in the future if will be helped by the Americans. It's a good question.
So picking up on that more broadly, you talked about how a lot of the states in the Middle East need to go through significant modernization processes. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you see democracy fitting into those processes, given the kinds of parties that elections in Gaza and Egypt have brought to power.
I think that some academic mistakes are coming from the notion that elections means democracy, or democracy means elections. No. Democracy means open society, in which women, minorities, everyone has his own seat near the table, and he can speak, and he can speak loudly, and he can act, not against the law, but he can act and convince. I remember how we tried to explain to many experts what will be the result of Muslim Brotherhood regime in Egypt. Slowly, any democracy signs will diminish. And it began to happen. Look what happened today in Turkey, which wasn't a democracy. When the army intervened from time to time, it was a democracy. Slowly, it's less and less democracy. More and more media people are in prison. You cannot demonstrate, and so on. So, democracy is not just elections. A good example is Hamas. Hamas won the election in Gaza. What happened some months later? They collected all the Fatah members, they shoot them in their knees, they dropped some of their leaders from the fourth floor when their hands tied behind their back. And then it was understood who won the election. So election is not only democracy is not only elections. It's one part of it, but not the most important one. The most important one is an open society. And the test are minorities and women. In all these places around the Middle East, minorities suffer, and in some cases, women are suffering. So, I think that you cannot impose democracy on a society when the society is not ready for democracy. It's a process, slowly. Not come tomorrow. From now on, it's democracy. It will not work, at least in the Middle East.
Do you think there's any way that the West can involve itself in the Middle East in order to build the institutions necessary to democracy, or is this just something that the West has to stand back and contain and let work itself out?
I think in most of the cases, stay out. In some cases, like Tunisia, you can make a difference. But if tomorrow you would try to impose democracy on Saudi Arabia, it will be a disaster. You understand?
What about Iran in 2009?
That was a big failure of the West.
So you think in that case?
Because it came from within. This is a good example. It's not that the democratic forces came from the outside, infiltrated by the CIA into Tehran. No, it came from within the society. It was rooted within the society. They need help because of the oppression of the regime, and they didn't get. So that was a huge mistake, because that was a genuine movement within the society.
But wouldn't intervention by the United States in that instance have totally undermined the movement for democracy?
For example, helping them in communication, in money, and so on. Don't lead them to America, but help them based on their way of democracy, which is different from the American and the Israeli one. They didn't get help.
So isn't the Green movement in Iran very similar to what we saw in the Arab country, in Syria, in Egypt?
It's a very interesting question. I think that the Iranian community and is different from in the Arab states. There is a bigger level of מעמד בינוני, איך אומרים? מעמד בינוני. Middle class. Bigger middle class than any Arab country. And this is something that sociologically you cannot overcome or jump over without having strong middle class, which exists in Iran. There are under pressure today, but there exists in Iran and does not exist in Syria. For sure didn't exist. In Saudi Arabia, they don't know the word. Either you are in the family or not, and so on and so forth. Exists, by the way, in a way in Egypt. Less strong than the one in Iran, but still exists in
What about Tunisia?
Tunisia, I'm not so familiar, but in Tunisia there was a process of westernizing the society for many, many years, enforced from the outside, and it is a little country, so it's apparently better succeed than other places.
How do you respond to the notion that we forced democracy on Germany after World War II and it worked?
Yes, but in Germany, remember that Germany was in front of the Western philosophy since Hegel and Kant. It's not something new for them.
Japan was outside.
Japan is very interesting question, and this is why MacArthur was smart enough to keep the head of the pyramid and not to change to inject the democracy to the existing system. And I have some very good friends in Japan that said, in Japan, genuinely, you have to make a long way before it will be a real democracy.
Do you feel that the fact that a lot of fighters in ISIS are foreign fighters and a lot of them came from Tunisia is kind of a indicator that maybe the reason Tunisia is doing so well is because a lot of extremists have left and back, it's going to be a problem? Or?
I might be a problem, but I don't think that this is the reason that it is going better in Tunisia than other places. No.
I wanted to ask, in 2012, I think the Prime Minister sort of made clear who his preferred president would be, and that man lost. And I was wondering if the Israeli national security apparatus worries that support for Israel is becoming a partisan issue, and that
it's very worrying. I was there, and I don't remember that the Prime Minister made it clear whom he wants to win. By the way, he thought that Obama will win. He didn't have illusions about it. And he didn't make it clear. I know that some Americans think that he did some deeds that might be looked like he took the chance that President Obama will lose, but I can tell you in the closed door it was clear for him that Obama is going to win. This is one of the most dangerous reactions that Israel might face in the future if the whole issue of Israel's security will be led by one party without the other one. That will be a very huge danger for Israel. We should do whatever we can to prevent it.
Not striking Iran in the wake of the P5+1 would be a good start for that.
No, this is not a partisan issue, with all due respect.
In the U.S. it might be.
How could Israel? I mean, in the U.S. you might find some Republicans in Congress who are willing not to.
But this is not a partisan issue. I mean, it's not Israel interfering in the bipartisan argument in America.
No, but it is a Democratic president, his legacy project. It could very well anger.
I mean, at the end of the day, we know that it is a democratic. I'm not sure that it will be looked like an Israeli action against Democratic Party. With all due respect, it will not.
Not against the party, but I mean, just I'm sorry to follow up, like that you will have more Democrats finding that more offensive.
So
I'm just saying, you're facing an environment of competing priorities and sort of.
Yes, but
Iran is clearly number one, and that's
No, at the end of the day, if more democratic, it's more Democrats will look at it as an anti. But even those who will say it's a huge mistake will not say Israel did it because of the Democratic Republican.
But then
that's not what governs. That's not necessarily the only thing that governs sort of what the party's reactions to the action.
No, the reaction will be based on what people think that it's good and wrong and good reaction, but it will not lead. That is not the issue which make Israel one-party issue. Our interference in the elections or our views about these leaders or this leader, you are right, change the mood.
So then putting aside Iran as the issue, do you think that Israel's allies in DC are helping or hurting Israel remain a two-party issue or a two-party cause?
What I'm ready to say is that we should be more cautious when we interfere in American issue and disagreement between the two parties. But if one party decides to back Israel and one party decides not to back Israel, it's not making us. It's a decision of the party. What can we do?
If Iran gets nuclear weapons, won't America also be threatened by Iran, not only Israel?
It's a good question.
Eventually.
I understand. It's a good question. I don't know answer to.
Do you think there's a high
Very
risk?
good question.
Do you think there's a high risk that ISIS can spread to Lebanon? If so,
Yes.
do you think that,
Yes. I think that the next targets of ISIS will be Jordan and Lebanon.
But they're not the same Muslim, the different type of Muslims, aren't they?
Different from where?
Like
No,
in Sunni
they are
and-
exactly like the Sunnis of Jordan.
but the Hezbollah.
And in Lebanon, they will have to fight Hezbollah.
Is that bad for us?
So that's good.
It's bad for Hezbollah, but if they win, we will face ISIS in Lebanon.
if I can ask a somewhat more geopolitical question, how would you put in context current efforts in Europe and elsewhere to delegitimize Israel compared to what you saw in the 1970s, for example?
I think now it's more problematic because the influence of the Muslim communities in Europe, which is much, much stronger, and in some countries it became a factor in the elections, and because the liberal side of the European society, as the years from the Holocaust are going on, they are less sensitive to Israel needs. It's happened all around the world. The survivors disappear, and people are less connected to and less understand the sensitivities of Israel. But Israel is less dependent on Europe than in the 70s, which is the other side of the equation.
All right, I don't know if we want to keep you up too much longer. Your sixth speech and their
It's
final
actually
one.
your seventh. I counted.
Seven?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's the seventh speech in less
Good, that's a complete
in less
cycle.
than 24 hours.
It's a complete cycle.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your candor.
I would just like to
a minute. Thank you for hosting me here. I want to say one word. Or two. One is that the alternative to a strong Jewish state is something that will... I met Kissinger in 2002, and we have a discussion for more than 2 hours, and he said in one of the issues that we spoke about, remember, United States of America can survive without the state of Israel. The Jews of America cannot survive without the state of Israel. And I think it's interest of everyone who is honest with his Judaism, to support strong Israel. You can argue what does it mean, but strong Israel. The other thing that I want to say is people are becoming very pessimistic about the situation in the Middle East, America and Israel, and so on and so forth. To encourage myself, I am going to my mother. She is 98 years old. She came to Israel in 94 years ago. And I think about theoretic situation in which, when she was 19, before the Holocaust, she would be asked a question by God, and God will tell her, Miss Heller, she was not married yet, Miss Heller, you know, I had an offer for you. You will have to be in prison 4 years under the British mandate. Your husband will have to fight in the Second World War. You don't know, but it's going to happen. Your sons and daughter will have to serve in the IDF, which will emerge many, many years. My sister was a full colonel in the IDF, and I was a two-star general. Your grandsons will have to serve in the army. And now is the last grandson, it's my son. But she had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tens of us. We were together in the army at the same time. And your grandson will have to risk himself by serving in the army, and it is going to happen next summer. But that will be the situation of the State of Israel in the year 2014. And God will describe the situation of the State of Israel from economy to military, from military to education, from education to health systems, startup, whatever, poverty, whatever is existing in Israel. And he would ask her before the Holocaust, are you ready to sign an agreement? She will be ready to crawl from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, because the office is in Jerusalem, as you know, to sign the agreement with God. So all those who are becoming pessimistic about the description of the Middle East and the problems between Israel and America and so on and so forth, remember what were the circumstances before the Holocaust in 35, 38, and where we are today after the Holocaust, and compare it to the situation of Israel today. And you understand that the potential ahead is much, much bigger than 90 years ago or 80 years ago. So I am very optimistic with all these problems. We have to deal with them, we have to be smart, not to make too many mistakes, to whatever. But the overall picture, I am very, very, very much optimistic, and much more optimistic if I compare it with the circumstances that brought us to the situation today from the day of my mother.
I'm glad you let us end on a positive note.
Oh, yeah, so I want to just, I want to thank you very, very much for what most people in this room don't realize is actually a trip across the world, to an exhausting trip across the world for what we framed as a short talk in New York and lecture at Yale that became 7 talks, just because of the way we roll here at this organization. And I want to thank you for being, so first of all, thank you for leaving your family to schlep across the world to speak to us and the various groups that were honored to have met you in the last 24 hours. And I want to say one other thing that's very important for me personally, because you're a very serious inspiration. Last night in New York, the last question which was asked to you by a writer for the Wall Street Journal was, if there's one book that you could recommend to read, what would it be? And you said the Bible. And I think that answer is
about
very...
Israel. She said, what book about Israel?
What about Did you say about Israel? We got to check the tape on that. I don't know if it was about Israel, but let's just say it was about Israel. But you did say the Bible, and I want to mention it maybe from a personal perspective, which is for me a very big inspiration, because you are one of the great leaders of the Jewish people and the political establishment that proudly displays your religious convictions together, but just by wearing a kippah on your head wherever you go, and your posture, an unconditional love for tradition, and an unconditional love for Torah, and an unconditional love for Masorah, and an unconditional love for the ways of our people in a traditional sense, while dealing with what we call the battle of modernity and religion. And it's something we shouldn't take light of. It's that perhaps is the greatest challenge for the world today. And you,
I'll tell you a story about it.
So
we sat in the White House. It was in the American side. It was the president, Secretary Kerry, and my counterpart, Susan Rice. And in our side was the Prime Minister, Ron Dermer, and myself, before he was nominated, which I'm glad that he was. And they served us a meal. And Ron looked at me. I didn't eat the meat, so he also didn't eat the meat. When we came out, he said, you know, though I asked outside and told me that the food was kosher. So at the end of the day, me and Ron, the only kosher eaters in the room, didn't eat. The president, the secretary, and the other.
Anyway, we do have a lobster in the back.
I never ate, and it's not temptation.
So, on that note, I will share a story that the dean of the law school invited me to a dinner this week on Monday night to the Union League Cafe. This is the second time he's done it, and we're good friends. This is, yeah, you can film it. I'll send it to Bob as a gift for Christmas. It was a discussion on Talmudic law by Moshe Abertal, our good friend, who's speaking tomorrow night. hosted by the dean and the Rabbi Tzlivka, Rabbi Sharon. A discussion on Talmudic law, and then a dinner at the Union League. So I did email back to the dean, who's a friend, that, as you know, the Union League is not kosher.
No?
And if you're going to have another discussion about, quote, Talmudic law, I'd be happy to host you all here at Crown Street with kosher food. So on that note, l'chaim. To the Bible. Cheers.